Thank you so much for agreeing to this. We really
Well,
appreciate it.
thanks for inviting me. I was excited about the topic and to be with both of you.
Yay.
Yeah, well, thank you.
So I'll just welcome in our listeners to our little powwow here. And I wanted to start by just sharing a little bit. You know, both of Joe and my background personally, Dick, but just to kind of recap, I come at this integration roadmap creation with Joe from having had my own personal, really debilitating, multiple time hospitalization, what's called spiritual emergency, and a community I formed out of that experience where I get to be in communion with people on the daily who've had these experiences. And some of them have had them from not having the proper framework to understand and bring to their psychedelic experiences. And Joe comes at it from a different angle. So we really appreciate this intersection because we kind of, we each bring an aspect which creates a greater whole.
From my perspective, starting out as a client and in therapy for years and coming across IFS at kind of like a stage in life where I really just thought there were no other ways to kind of deepen or connect to this experience that I was having on the planet, and just assuming that I was a broken individual and identifying myself as that person. And, honestly, Dick, I really just, I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. I've worked with you a few times and oh my goodness, I can deeply say that this thing we call IFS and the way you've been so generous in opening the door for it to really be expressed in the world in all its authentic purpose has just made such a deep and meaningful impact for me. And my, in conjunction with the IFS work and the medicine journeys that I've been doing, there's just been such a deepening of experience of this thing we call self, and a sense of like, wow, it's not just me, I'm not alone. Mm-hmm. And having that deep experience inside, a sense of a me, a self that can be present to my parts and my inner world. And then this kind of broader experience of a divine self, being connected to that as well. And the process kind of almost mirroring the inner world process, this external world process with the higher divine self. Mm-hmm. Right. So that was kind of something that maybe we'd like to hear more with you, your own kind of IFS psychedelic journey combination, or whatever lands for you with what we've said so far.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. And also to try to give an IFS perspective on the spiritual crises.
Great.
And spiritual bypassing too. So I've been involved with combining IFS particularly with ketamine for a couple of years now. We've done, I leave next Monday for I think it's our fourth or fifth retreat that way. And then I have personally experienced ketamine as well. And my take on it, particularly what they call medium dose ketamine, is that not only does it help your protectors, what I call protectors, sort of go to sleep, but you also really leave your body and you enter, if you're having a good experience, what's called the non-dual, or the big self in my language. And as a result, it's often quite blissful, and you feel this lack of separation from anything and anybody. And that happened to me. I was not connected to my body at all, and just felt this wonderful sense of connectedness to everything. And then coming back, I remember, I think I was saying it out loud, oh no, I'm coming back to this time thing, doesn't really exist there, and coming back into this body that keeps me separate from everybody. And but that experience really stayed with me because, just through doing my own IFS and some meditation, I had some sense of that larger self that I visited with ketamine, but I'd never really gone as far. And so it really convinced certain parts of me that exists, and that death is just a transition, which is why I think psychedelics are so useful for end of life patients. And that what we're calling self, that I love the metaphor from quantum physics of photons being both a particle and a wave. And so in that state, you're in the wave of self, and then you particleize as you come back. So it's the same self, but in this container. And where was I going with that? Oh, it just made me thoroughly convinced that that's the case, that what we're calling self is a drop of that big ocean. And when it's fully released, even when you don't leave your body, like I think MDMA has more of that effect. You don't go anywhere really, but you just feel this huge amount of connection and compassion and love for everything. And so different psychedelics vary in the way they affect that, but what they have in common is they somehow put your protectors down temporarily. What's unfortunately called ego death, or ego, what's the other word? Ego
annihilation or
dissolution.
Dissolution or annihilation, which drives these manager parts crazy. Tell them they're going to die. But they go offline for a while. And then not only does that allow you a greater sense of what I call self, but it offers a kind of invitation to lots of parts that you would exile, that weren't available. And that's some of why people have these bad experiences. It's because it opens the door to stuff that they really tried their best to stay away from for years. And now it's here. And if they're not with a facilitator who knows what to do with that, then they can walk away with those formerly exiled parts dominating them and creating all kinds of havoc. So
yeah.
I love your explanation of, or what I'm reading into your experience with ketamine, going from into wave and back to particle, and how that's landing for me is in my ketamine experiences, there was a singularity to who I defined as me. And this awareness, just like I was so unblended from all the other dimensions of myself, in such a clean experience, that I know what you're saying now. I mean, I've heard you say this wave particle expression before, and I didn't really get it. But the ketamine is such a unique medicine in that you almost are so taken out of all the things you're attached to, this thing we call self or awareness or whatever it is, your higher consciousness, and you do become connected to a collective higher, big self place. And that attachment of like, it just became very clear to me how, this is how my parts blend with me. This is what it feels like to not be blended with them in such a clean, pure experience. And then having that experience and coming back into the body and back kind of blended or partially blended or whatever way I'm organized, it just gave me such a clarity for this idea that we call self and how it could be applied in the work that I'm doing. So.
Yeah, that's great, Joe.
I love that the particle and the wave also, because it just speaks just so much, I think, of why Joe and I love this work, or why I do, is it's because isn't that what integration is realizing we are both, like the glorious both and, that, Carl Jung quote, it's we are both the particle and the wave. And I'm excited about a future where we get to really live as that. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
We had an interesting question we were pulling together, this idea of how medicines have informed you about higher self or self, and what that might mean, or something you might share around that, I guess.
Well, what I didn't mention before is, for example, on low dose ketamine, where people don't leave, but their protectors chill out and they're in their body with a lot of self. They sometimes they'll leave for a short period, but when they come back, and also with the high dose ketamine, when people come back, they temporarily have a huge amount of access to self in their bodies. And so during that time is when we can do a lot of important IFS, because what I said earlier is that these parts that would have taken maybe 10 sessions of convincing protectors to allow us to get to are just right there. And there's so much self that in 15 minutes I can do what often takes several hours. So it's very efficient that way, and that's why I'm excited about it. So people, I this net when we're doing the retreat, I'll work with a group of maybe 8 people, and everybody else is watching. So these are the 8 that did the medicine. And I'll just go from one to the other, and for 10 or 15 minutes, they're doing huge pieces of work. And the people watching are contributing because they're all staying in self and providing support. And so we have this kind of wonderful group experience that is very nourishing for us as facilitators. And the other thing I will say is what I learned pretty quickly, because it's such a big part of IFS, is in the prep sessions. So before taking the medicine, we'll spend time asking people if they have any fear about doing it. Bring up their protectors, and then address their fears. So yeah, I get that you're afraid you won't come back, or I get that you're afraid that we'll be judging you or watching you, or and then we'll speak to each of those fears and not take the medicine without permission from those protectors. And we find when we do that, the journeys are much more serene, and you don't get the backlash that some people have. And you don't it's just a much better experience. And that's
I think the oh, go ahead, sorry.
One of the things I'm trying to bring to the psychedelic community is just being aware that you can negotiate all that in advance.
What's so great about what you're saying is, we have this list of protector fears that we work on and get to know in our training, and really bringing that forward, especially when it comes to engaging with a medicine, because it's as if the medicine has access to all, and your protectors are operating from a limited perspective on what's going on inside. And these protector fears are really that bridge. And as a therapist, navigating protector fears and helping protectors be in collaboration with the healing process is extremely important. When it comes to medicines and the ways the medicines interact with protectors, softening them, making some space, allowing more access to self energy or a higher consciousness and ability to kind of expand your point of view, is significant. And I think the thing you were just talking to as well, how with ketamine in particular, it gives you access to such a powerful experience of pure self that your parts are like, oh, that's you, that's self, really then yeah, let's go for it. And I found in my own work, I think a piece that medicines have helped me make a final link is a lot of my protector fears were like, protector fear number 9, there is no self, right?
Right.
And so having an experience of presence and self energy and higher awareness gave my parts the ability to finally trust
Yeah.
that self exists, self can lead, and self has this profound capacity that I was so unaware of.
Yeah.
It just was really deeply life changing.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Joe, and I totally agree with that. I came to the combination of IFS and ketamine with a lot of skepticism. I thought we do pretty well without that,
Mm,
but maybe it could help with when we get stuck.
mm,
But when I saw how much self was accessed,
mm.
and then how parts react pretty immediately to, oh, we didn't know this guy was in there. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they then just let you do a lot of work.
Hmm.
And I also expected, because there wasn't such concern for getting permission from protectors, that there would be a lot of backlash.
Yes,
We ran into some, but not like I expected, because
sure.
people are going for these very raw exiles that
Mm.
generally, if you don't get full permission, you'll pay for. But
Well, it makes a lot of sense with what you said, right? If in the preparatory work prior to medicine, you're already having these discussions about protectors, their fears, what might show up, and how they're kind of holding the container of who you are, and how the medicines kind of open that up and you have this experience, then you're actually revisiting the things you've already talked about, right? So ideally, if there's enough prep work and discussion around protector fears, then once the journey's over and you're into the integration process, you can kind of readdress those things. And that was certainly my experience, right? Because my protector fears were self doesn't exist and what makes you think you can help me now, um, there was a bit of backlash, and I had a reference point of, okay, and what was it like on the medicine when you notice I was there? It's like they still don't want to let go. They still want to run the show, but they couldn't deny that there was an experience there that
yeah,
gave them some evidence to weigh against all the previous evidence that no one exists. So it was really quite something.
yeah, that's some of what I was trying to say, because before I came along, they weren't doing a lot of work with
Yeah.
protectors. Yet
Mm,
they weren't having the backlash experiences I expected.
mm,
And in exploring that, when that much self shows up, protectors say, well, maybe we don't have to do this.
yeah.
So,
Mm,
and I don't want to minimize, because we haven't had a lot of bad experiences, but I know of a lot of bad
yeah.
experiences.
Yes.
And generally, my experiences, like, I have one of my best friends. I referred to a guy who did some ketamine, because my friend was very depressed for a long time, and it was a terrifying experience.
Mm, mm,
Had a panic attack the whole time,
mm, hmm.
and I don't think the guy I referred him to knew what to do with that, because he
Yeah.
wasn't out of drugs.
Right.
Right.
And so the other thing I want to bring is this awareness that if you have a panic attack, it's not a panic attack. It's exile with a lot of terror that's come in
Sure.
and taken over. Uh,
Mhm.
and all these other kind of things that are happening that are scary are just protectors trying to shut it down somehow, or keep you away
Yeah.
from it. And if
Mm.
you hold that perspective, and then can help the client realize that's what's happening and get a little separation, then you can do a
Yeah.
lot of work. But if you don't have that perspective and you think, oh my God, it's a panic attack,
Yeah.
then you're not going to be
It's
able to.
like these layers of perception and point of view, right? If you're blended with an exile and you're living in that situation, that's what's real, or you're blended with a protector and you're living with that point of view and belief system, or you've had some access or experience of being in this kind of present self container, I'm with you all and no one's doing anything wrong kind of place. Like, we're trying to help clients find these reference points and these points of view, and kind of unblend from aspects of themselves, that the medicines really contribute to that unblending process so profoundly. And our hope, Kate and I, our hope is that with IFS, we can kind of explain to someone, this is what happened and what's going on, to give you a map to understand. We're not invalidating your experience and what you're blended with, but we're telling you how your mind is structured and how your inner world might be kind of navigated, so that you can find your way into these higher points of view and notice more of who you are, I guess.
Yeah. And Kate, I have a lot less experience with spiritual emergencies clients, but some.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty similar. I don't know what you think.
I do too. I think it's the way IFS has been the way we have found to help people move forward from just what has happened. To some people, is just they go, oh my God, like everything is everywhere. And then just having a map, having a way to go, oh, wait a minute, this is this, and this is this. And because this is this, and this is this, I must be something else. And then there's a little bit of the distance and a way to relate to it. And even in my own experience, what I love about this so much, and you were speaking to it before, Joe, is like, when that happens, there's a trust that opens up. When you have access to a little bit of self, it's like there's trust that opens up. When that happens for me and some of the people in our community, there, you can see it, and there's a somatic response to that. It's like a parent holding you, and I'll have this like nervous system kind of settling, and it's amazing how you can navigate really big stuff, like the biggest stuff, if you just have a little space.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think also, I mean, I shared with you, Kate, and maybe at some point with you, Dick, my very first experience with psychedelics is maybe similar to the client you just mentioned, Dick, where I didn't have an IFS person at the time. And I was so kind of stuck in a loop with so many baseline protectors at the moment that I was so unconscious they were even operating. But the experience itself introduced me to this baseline unconscious layer of protection that was happening. And IFS is the thing that helped me make sense of it, right? Like otherwise, I had two choices, kind of basically just assume, well, this is who I am. I'm not just some damaged, wounded inner child. I'm also like these like parts of me that don't know what to do about that and are trying, several strategies just to kind of like exist in the world. And it's such a desperate, lonely, terrifying place to be when your experience of being blended in these aspects of yourself is all you know. And when the medicines open you up to the possibility or an experience of something bigger than yourself, and you don't know what to do with that, or you don't know how to bring that window of like perspective back into your day-to-day experience, then yeah, your parts are just going to take over and run the show, and it's business as usual, So yeah, I don't know if you wanted to say something else, Kate, but it just led me to another question we might ask, which is about, kind of the routines or day-to-day integration that you're doing, Dick, or that we might, encourage in our program. But those are two thoughts I had.
Yeah. I will actually just on the last topic, just for a second. I think when we met you at Kripalu, Dick, you had said something about, and this really resonated with me. If you go in and you have this sort of window into, what you have more access through the medicine than you would if you didn't have it, and you like say hi to all these parts and you meet them and you kind of just like leave them when you're done, they might get a little not so happy with you. So I wonder if you want to just, before we move on to the next question, just speak to that a bit.
Yeah, I think that's what Joe is getting at too. So
Okay.
Yeah, the follow-up, not just with psychedelics, but in IFS in general, is really crucial. And these days I make a huge point of it with clients. So after we do a big session, I'll ask them on a daily basis to check in with the part that they just healed and make sure it knows it's not being forgotten by them, and that you're going to keep taking care of it, and then also check in with all the protectors of it that help them into new roles. And I'm amazed at how many people can actually do that on their own. And when they do, whatever healing we did really sticks.
Yeah.
When they don't, sometimes it does stick anyway, but sometimes the parts feel abandoned and like they can't trust self and go back to the scenes they were stuck in, or bring their birth back. And so that's become a huge part of the model, that healing isn't just the session, it's also the follow-up with the client. And that follow-up also sort of cements the idea that there is a self who can take care of you without the therapist, and it builds that kind of trust as well.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, it's almost doubly, I don't know if it's more important actually with the kinds of parts that get access through psychedelics, because typically they've been exiled for a long time.
Yeah, right.
And I think maybe speaking to what we've already said, you know, the medicines kind of give you some access to places maybe you haven't been before. And certainly in my case, just a sense of my inner world that was really unknown to me. And subsequently with the medicine work and IFS, just knowing when I encounter these places and having a reference point of knowing, even while I'm on the medicine, of like, oh wow, I'm really blended with something, I'm not really quite sure what it is, and I'm having an experience of feeling terrified, or I'm dying, or whatever it is, and to not panic. And it gave me a deeper sense of what guides are always telling you to surrender to the medicine, right? And to just know that I'm in a wave of an experience, and to just be with it and not fight it, and to know that I could come back to that at some point. But, you know, the map, IFS as a map, just is such a great way to kind of be in this experience and also make sense of it all, I guess, is really what I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't know that I've shared this publicly, but I had a MDMA session once where all of a sudden I just had these, you know, you mentioned entities in the beginning in the meditation, and it was like one after another would just kind of come through my body, and it was disturbing, and I think it was disturbing for my facilitator, because I was speaking these different languages some of the time, and spitting and cursing, and I was just kind of noticing it. You know, I was just, okay, here comes another one. And I went home, and it really freaked my wife out, because that kept happening. And I called up this woman who can channel my guides and asked, you know, is there some greater purpose for me to do this? And she said, no. The guide said, you know, you came here to go deep, and you did, and you opened a portal to all this stuff that's floating around in the atmosphere. Just started coming through you. And so, you want me to close the portal? I said, yeah, okay. And immediately it stopped. So
I want her number.
So I bring that up just to mention that that's another danger, that not just parts get access, but when you're out of your body, it's an opening for these other energies that are floating around to inhabit your body and cause a lot of mayhem.
Yeah.
As you share it, it's wild, because it reminds me of when you talk about, you know, as we navigate our inner world, the rules of the inner world, your inner experience are different than the rules of our kind of day-to-day existence. And also the rules of this kind of external guides and spiritual entities, like the rules of that world are have their own ways of operating as well. It just, I don't know, it made me think of that, how just staying really present and open to whatever it is you're experiencing, and then having an opportunity to just sit with it and be with it, and connect with people that understand the rules of those places.
Yeah. And it's also, I love it, there's a simplicity to it too, because you dealt with that situation the way you would meeting any other part, right? You just met it with self energy and let it do its thing. It didn't become blended with it.
Yeah, and sent it on its way as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else about your own kind of personal integration or your own kind of daily practice of integration, Dick, you want to share? Or
You know, I do a lot of work on my own, and I've been doing this 40 years, and there's still work to do.
mm,
Although I, you know, as many people would attest, I am a very different person than I was when I started out for doing the work. Um, and you know, we did mention guides, and that, you know, is something that I try to stay connected to. I don't get words that much. I just get kind of senses of what I should do. And that is facilitated by psychedelics. Like one of those high dose ketamine trips or medium dose, where I left, and the people, my wife was laying next to me, and other people were there, and they heard me saying, I won't forget, you know. And then as I'm coming back, I started saying, don't leave me, don't leave me. And my wife said, I won't. And I said, I'm not talking to you. So yeah, it opens up levels of spiritual wisdom that these parts and their burdens block you from accessing too.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. There was an experience I had in the ocean recently. I was on a low dose of ayahuasca and mushrooms, and it opened up this. First of all, it was a beautiful, deeply profound experience of being held by a divine mother, and helped me really heal a wound I have with my own mother. But it opened up this idea of this external essence of big self also has its own expressions, right? This sense of a divine mother nurturing energy that felt like the divine feminine. And another, you know, had a hape experience where I just felt this just expanded, deep, kind of rooted in my body experience of power and strength and groundedness and connection. And it felt very, very different as I referenced those experiences in my body. But just, yeah, this acknowledgement that the big self as a container has all these expressions as well, you know, and ideas of guides. And I don't know, I'm a lot more open to all of that than I ever thought I would possibly be, you know, aware of. But and even as I speak about it now, you know, there's an old me inside that's just like, what the F are you talking about? But you know, you can't deny your experience. You can't deny the experience. And so I often say this to my clients, you know, let's just trust what you're experiencing and use that as evidence, because the other parts of you are carrying the evidence of your previous experience. And it's as if you're inside trying to gather new evidence of how to be in the world and what the possibilities are. And eventually your system will start to reorganize and recalibrate to a higher truth, you know. It's really quite something.
And my father was a well-known scientist in his field, and the best piece of advice he ever gave me, I think, was to follow the data, even if it takes you way outside your paradigm.
I love that.
And it's taken me way far away from any beliefs coming into this. And at first I had that skeptic saying this is bullshit, and you know, to his credit, he gave me the space to keep exploring, and
Yeah.
he hasn't been turned the corner. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can't deny this, not just your own experience, but how many people have these common experiences and have had them for centuries.
Yeah.
Through shamanism, for example.
Sure. And to meet those skeptics and parts of us, and it's so interesting because with the IFS model will help you still be present with, if someone's trusting their experience of, you know, I can't trust men and the world's a dangerous place and, you know, everyone's against me and it's me against the world and there's no one there to help me, like all these things, right? If we still continue to meet a client in that space and get to know their protective system and how they're holding that for them, yeah, the way through is to be with. And so it's we just keep reiterating, you know, at any stage you're at in the model, there's a beautiful way that IFS can kind of help you navigate that.
Right.
So yeah, we'd love to hear maybe from you, Dick, like maybe your personal vision of like IFS now, or how you see it operating in the world, or yeah, what's kind of the vision for people on a personal level doing this work, maybe integrating either medicine or some kind of like exploration inside using IFS. What's kind of the personal vision you're seeing for people as if they commit to this work?
Yeah, there's a personal vision and there's a bigger vision too.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna ask next.
Yeah.
Yeah, the personal, you know, in IFS we have these 4 goals, one of which is to help the parts transform out of their extreme roles into who they're designed to be and help them unburden. And then the second we've talked about a lot today, which is to have them come to trust self as a leader. And then the third is to help them harmonize with each other, so that not only do they trust self, but they get to know each other and working together in ways that they enjoy with each other. And then the last goal is to bring more self to the outside world. And often people start to become much more socially active or social activists, and that seems to be what self wants: healing to happen both inside and outside. And self, through the seaward clarity, sees injustice both inside and outside and wants to do something about it. So
Yeah.
and so that takes us to the bigger picture for me, which is just in general to bring more self energy to the world.
Yeah.
And psychedelics is one way to do that. So that's part of why I'm invested in it, because we're, individuals, as they do this, are accessing more self, but they're also providing portals for a lot of spiritual guidance that is crucially needed right now. And
yeah.
So, and you know, there are other projects, sort of larger scale projects, to bring IFS to different areas. But in terms of accessing that spiritual wisdom, I think for me the psychedelics is the biggest one.
Yeah, it kind of extends from maybe some of the things we talked about earlier. You know, the more we're kind of cultivating a self-led experience inside and identifying the me as the capital S self, as opposed to the me who's blended with parts of me, kind of like what we talked about before. If you're kind of caught in this experience or connected to this experience, and as the hope is that as you identify the me as in connection to this, then you're operating differently in your relationships and your families and your with your kids and your day-to-day experience. And then you're kind of stepping out of those stories and that way of operating into this kind of newer point of view around how can I bring more self energy to others and work in this collaborative kind of self energy space and and again, the process kind of repeats itself again. There's this self of you collaborating with other self energy of other folks, and you're being with the protective system of cultures and families and traditions. And it's really quite fascinating to kind of hold the paradigm in these kind of different ways. But yeah, having done the work individually, you kind of understand the map a little better, so that when you're in these bigger kinds of ways of engaging, you just follow the same map. It's all right there. It's really beautiful.
Totally agree. I'm very into the parallels. You know, we could even take a country like the United States and see that it's got enormous numbers of exiles, not just through racism and so on, but also economic exiles. Because what is it, 60-some% of the people in the United States live paycheck to paycheck, and the disparity in income has never been greater in our country's history. And and when you have that kind of pain and fear, in any system, that level of pain and fear, the protectors are going to be very extreme. That's what we find.
Yes.
Got extremes on both sides, and they polarize with each other, and very little self to be found in this country. And so again, that's, you know, we're going to run trainings for executive coaches to bring more self-leadership to corporations, and working with a lot of political and social activists, leaders, to do that too. So it's a multi-front campaign, apparently my guides have set up here.
Wow.
A little hard to keep up with it, but
And just as we said, you know, the way to meet those protective layers is from even more compassion, open-hearted, and learning about those protector fears, right? Again, we're learning about what's underneath this protective cultural fear or identity fear or racial fear, and just being with this protective layer with compassion and open-hearted. Let me hear your stories and why you're so afraid, you know, and meeting those protective places, and so that we can be with the exiled, wounded places, right? We're still following a pattern here of how to manage and be with that.
Yeah, and that's all parallel too. I can't tell you how many clients I've had where we started out with a part that was determined to kill them, and just said nothing but purely extreme things about them, or why they deserve to die, and you just hang with that part as long as you know it's not a entity, you know, what we call a UB. Just you stay compassionate toward it. You have the client stay compassionate toward it. And at some point, it really starts to soften and talk about what it's protecting. And so I think all that is totally parallel to political situation here. And it's easy to vilify Trump supporters, but you know, I can see the pain that's driving them to those extremes.
I love that quote, hurt people, and it's just so true. And I've found in the work we do with our community, and then I'm sure you both have found also, that sometimes that activism is the simplest thing. It's meeting another person at the grocery store from self-energy, and the amount of transformation that can have just in a moment is everything, because people aren't used to being met that way. They're being used to being met with layers upon layer of protection between them and another human. And it's really been something that is, like, I don't know, just very tender in my heart, just how much of an impact you can make just from those little interactions. Like that to me is a form of activism, you know?
Wow.
So it can go macro, it can go micro, and everything in between.
Yeah. I'm interested in both of your personal experiences with the crises, and how you kind of got out of them. So if you want to, you probably have shared that with your listeners before, but
Yeah. Well, you want to start, Joe, or me?
Yeah, sure. I guess to try to put it in a nutshell, I'm a think out loud person and just like formulate what I want to say as I'm saying it.
Never
So
fit
let
in
me
a nut,
just,
so.
yeah, let me just take a pause here and just um, yeah, asking a manager to help me out and speaking clearly here. Yeah, there's been, I've done probably 25 plus journeys now, um, with various medicines. And yeah, sincerely, this IFS as a map has just always been the place to go and get organized and understand. And most recently, the shift from doing individual sessions, kind of blindfolded under the medicine, um, were my primary experiences. And in the last year here in Austin, started to do some experiences in a group. And that's been deeply profound for me to notice that I have wounds that kind of operate in a group experience and protective systems that really I couldn't really meet and understand unless I was in another kind of group experience. And so I've said this before, a sense of like, trauma that happens in relationship, I feel needs to be healed in a relationship. And so being in these group experiences where parts of me can show up and be seen and held and heard by the group and not just my own presence and self energy has been very, very impactful. And so as I start to kind of explore outside my inner world and then engage externally from a higher sense of maybe more self online, um, yeah, the biggest shift for me was that those protective parts of me that didn't believe anyone was out there, um, or that I could trust, something bigger than myself. That's been the biggest shift recently. Just a sense of like, there's a self energy and a presence available out here that my protective system was so terrified to kind of look outward. And that's shifted and has just been so major. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm exploring being in groups, noticing how my protective system shows up there, being with those aspects of myself, and then just kind of cultivating this sense of like, well, the messages I got from the medicine were maybe it's time to put that story down and live a different story. Just letting me really step out of these protective kind of inner world, this is who I am places, and stepping into, there was kind of an offering for myself to say, here's the vision of what you could do and be in the world if you accept this opportunity. And so I'm really just trying to slow down and just pay attention to, call it kind of divine intervention or just some kind of messages or awareness outside of my own awareness that can kind of point me in the right direction to the next step. So that's kind of where I'm at.
beautiful. Okay.
Mine is a little different. So, but it's interesting because it kind of lands at the same juncture. Like, so I had thought I was living a really spiritual life for a lot of years. I grew up just always seeking, like from a very young age. And I moved to California and I did all the things you do if you're a spiritual person. And I was doing a lot of bhakti yoga and, devotion to the divine. And I really think there was a part of me that was living very sincerely a spiritual life. But I had used it to control a whole lot of stuff that was going on under the surface, like just to manage things I didn't even know were there because I didn't know they were there, because you don't know what you don't know. So it was like 2016 when like 5 things that sort of happened in succession really just took the pin out of all of these ways that I was managing life to keep those really scared sensitive, exiled part safe. And my psyche just blasted open, along with a host of the only thing I can call it is lightning like energy from the bottom of my feet up out through my head. And I had to put myself back together over a number of, like, it's been 7 years now. I've been pretty stable for the past 2. I owe a lot of that to finding IFS and learning how to really understand what was happening. Like, basically what was happening was I was managing exiles using spirituality, but I was managing exiles. And the exiles were getting more and more agitated and feeling more and more vulnerable. And when these things kind of came apart, it was like my arms were tired of holding down all the corks. I forget whose metaphor that is, if it's yours or I heard somewhere else, but it was like all the corks came flying out. And yeah, it was just debilitating. I was in the hospital multiple times, never the psych hospital, but I took myself to the ER. I thought I had rabies, and I learned all about all of these different types of spiritual emergencies you can have. Because I had a filmmaking background, I started to film my experience and my quest for answers. Turns out there wasn't a lot of information on Kundalini phenomenon that was really sound at the time. And there was definitely not a lot of information on what to do once this had happened. There was a lot of actually unhelpful stuff. So we filmed this sort of trailer to a film called When Lightning Strikes, and put it up online. And then it was right around the time where COVID hit. So people came, everyone was doing things on Zoom. So all of our interviews went up on Zoom, and people just started writing in all over the world saying, I'm having this experience too. And I'm having this experience too. And oh my God, you're talking about it. And what do we do? And so this thing where we thought it was going to be a film that found answers, like, of what we could do, became more of just like a group of people supporting each other. And it turns out that in that holding environment, that's where the most self is revealed, in like a safe space where it's a group relating to each other. They don't feel alone. People don't feel alone anymore, and they feel like they have access to more of what's true. And so when we have the When Lightning Strikes community, and we call ourselves sometimes parts evangelists, because we've all kind of just adopted this language to talk about what's happening. And it's been a miracle to watch people who've had Kundalini awakenings, non-dual experiences that they don't know how to integrate, just the whole gamut of spiritual emergencies, kind of start to understand their experience through the lens of IFS, and have less fear. And then the energies kind of sort themselves out and can, do the thing they're meant to do. So I know that might have been a lot of info, but that's kind of how I got here to be doing this with Joe.
Yeah, it's beautiful to hear.
What's that?
In retrospect,
Yeah.
I'm curious about what you probably would call Kundalini energy from an IFS perspective. Do you have a sense of what that is, probably?
That's a really good question. Do I have a sense of it? I think once, I think when there's space for this energy that naturally is animating us to animate us, it's able to do that.
I've come to call self energy is a kind of vibrating.
Yeah.
I mentioned that from our earlier meditation, that when I'm really in self, I can feel it just running through my body. And maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
It sounded like it was causing problems to have that much of it, or something like that.
I think what happens is when there's so much of it, it's illuminating everything. So it's not like a titrated experience where you can go in and be like, I'm going to deal with this exile and I'm going to help this, protector relax. It's just everything all at once, all the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like having a psychedelic experience, but, ongoingly and without taking anything.
Yeah, but you have to survive while you're in it.
Yeah. So, yeah. And many of the members of that community got there from just being on poor guidance when they've, not being held properly during a journey. And so, yeah, I come at the kind of prevention angle and damage control, and Joe is more proactive. And in that is a good balance.
Yeah, I'm really glad you guys are doing this. I think it's terribly important, and
Yeah.
you know, I do keep hearing about bad experiences people have, and so yeah, I'm really
Yeah.
honored.
Thank you so much, Dick. Honestly,
Uh,
this was such a joy to connect with you and see you again and talk about the things that we love. And it's been fun.
yeah.
Yeah,
I totally,
mm,
totally appreciate it.
Any final words, Dick?
Yeah.
just keep it going. I think it's so important what you're doing, and really appreciate how you're
Mm,
bringing IFS into it.
Perfect.
thank you.
It's the crux. Thank you
Yeah.
so
Yes. Thank you so much, Dick.
much.